What if the greatest power you could ever wield came not from what you say or do, but from what you refuse to give? Imagine walking into a room filled with voices competing for attention, arguments echoing, gestures, flying egos, colliding. And then there is one figure who says almost nothing. No grand introduction, no effort to impress, no desperate signaling of value. Yet the entire room shifts toward him. Why? Because his silence is not weakness. It is strategy. This paradox, offering nothing yet gaining everything, is at the heart of what I call the Machiavellian law of the void. And it is one of the most misunderstood but potent tools of influence you will ever encounter. At its core, the void is a psychological force. It is the deliberate act of withholding expression, emotion, and identity, not out of insecurity, but out of discipline. Human beings are not comfortable with ambiguity. We crave definition, clarity, and predictability. When confronted with silence or blankness, we instinctively rush to fill the gap. That is why a person who offers nothing can often extract everything. They compel others to project their desires, fears, and assumptions onto them. In this way, the silent figure becomes not simply a participant in social dynamics, but the gravitational center around which others revolve. To understand this phenomenon, consider the mechanics of attention. In social psychology, attention operates like a form of currency. Most individuals are constantly spending it oversharing details, defending themselves, or striving to be understood. But the more accessible and predictable you are, the less valuable you become. Availability breeds familiarity, and familiarity erodes fascination. By contrast, scarcity amplifies value. This principle is evident in markets, relationships, and negotiations. When something is rare, when it is difficult to decode, it becomes magnetic. Historical examples illustrate this principle with striking clarity. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, did not need to announce his wisdom in every setting. His quiet detachment during moments of crisis gave him an aura of stability. Genghis Khan often withheld his true intentions until his enemies had already surrendered to false assumptions. Even Machiavelli himself, writing in exile, used silence and absence as a form of intellectual weaponry. The power of these figures was not only in what they revealed, but more importantly, in what they concealed. Nature also reflects this law. The black hole does not radiate light, yet it exerts such immense gravitational pull that entire galaxies bend toward it. The ocean does not declare its strength with noise, yet its depth commands reverence. Similarly, the person who embodies the void does not need to demand respect. It is felt in the restraint, in the refusal to participate in the endless economy of overexposure. Psychologically, this strategy creates asymmetry. When one individual overshares while the other withholds, the dynamic tilts. The expressive person gives away information, emotion, and leverage. The restrained person, by contrast, remains undefined, unreadable, and therefore unassailable. This imbalance breeds curiosity and even obsession. The unknown exerts a stronger hold on the human mind than the fully revealed. The first lesson in mastering the void, then, is to recognize that silence is not emptiness. It is containment. It is the art of allowing others to reveal themselves while you remain unreadable. It is not about becoming invisible, but about becoming untouchable. And in a world where everyone is desperate to be seen, the one who does not perform becomes unforgettable. When we examine everyday interactions, we can see the law of the void at work, in subtle but undeniable ways. Consider the negotiation table. Two individuals sit across from one another. One speaks quickly, trying to persuade, justify, and fill every gap in conversation. The other remains still, composed, offering almost nothing. Over time, the imbalance becomes unbearable. The talkative negotiator reveals more information than intended, makes concessions simply to break the silence, and gradually loses leverage. The quiet negotiator, by contrast, has gained power, not through aggression, but through absence. This is weaponized restraint. The same dynamic occurs in personal relationships. Many people believe intimacy is built through constant disclosure, pouring out feelings, retelling stories, or seeking validation. Yet the paradox is that excessive transparency often diminishes attraction. Familiarity can breed comfort, but it also kills mystery. The person who reveals too much too soon is rarely perceived as powerful. Instead, they become predictable, convenient, even disposable. By contrast, the person who withholds, who reveals only in fragments, creates an atmosphere of depth and intrigue. Their silence becomes a canvas upon which others paint their fantasies. In essence, they are not loved for who they are, but for what others imagine them to be. This strategy is not about manipulation in the crude sense. It is about understanding human psychology. Curiosity is among the most powerful motivational forces. People are addicted to solving puzzles, decoding signals, and reducing uncertainty. By becoming deliberately ambiguous, you trigger this instinct. Others chase clarity, and in their chase, they invest. The more they invest, the more influence you gain. But why is this so difficult for most people to practice? The answer lies in our conditioning. Modern culture glorifies visibility, expression, and oversharing. Social media thrives on constant updates, declarations, and emotional exposure. The economy of attention rewards those who are loudest, not those who are quietest. Yet this very environment makes silence even more powerful. In a world drowning in noise, restraint stands out as a form of strength. The law of the void also explains why some individuals seem magnetic without obvious effort. Think of the man who rarely interrupts, who speaks only after long pauses, and whose words are few but sharp. His presence is felt precisely because it is not broadcast. People lean in when he finally speaks because scarcity has made his voice valuable. Contrast this with the individual who comments on everything, reacts to everything, and explains endlessly. Their words lose weight because they are too abundant. In psychological terms, this is the principle of asymmetrical investment. The more one person invests through talking, confessing, and revealing, the more they have to lose. The person who invests little retains control because their energy, their presence, their words are rare and therefore priceless. This asymmetry reshapes the power dynamic. The one who offers less becomes the one who receives more. The second lesson of the void is therefore discipline. To embody this law, one must restrain the impulse to react, to explain, to perform. It is not passivity, but mastery of self. By controlling your own expression, you control the frame of interaction. You no longer compete in the noisy marketplace of attention. Instead, you dictate tempo, forcing others to adapt to your silence. To master the law of the void, we must separate silence from weakness. Many mistake restraint for passivity, imagining that a man who withholds is simply shy, insecure, or disengaged. But the strategic void is the opposite of timidity. It is calculated control. It is the decision to say less because each word is intended to carry more weight. It is the refusal to give away power in an economy where expression itself is currency. History is filled with examples of this principle applied with devastating precision. When rulers and generals revealed too much, they became predictable and vulnerable. But when they cloaked their intentions, they generated both fear and loyalty. Genghis Khan, for instance, often allowed opponents to misinterpret his silence as weakness, only to strike with overwhelming force when they had relaxed. His restraint was not absence of power, but concealment of power. Even in philosophy, we find echoes of this strategy. Stoics like Marcus Aurelius emphasized detachment and composure not because they lacked feeling, but because they recognized that mastery of self is the foundation of mastery over others. The same logic applies in modern settings. In professional life, the individual who refrains from oversharing in meetings, who resists the urge to constantly justify themselves, begins to stand apart. Colleagues sense composure and confidence. Silence creates an aura of competence because it signals you do not need to compete for attention. In relationships, the person who does not rush to validate, to over-explain, or to confess every detail creates intrigue and authority. Their restraint demands respect, while excessive exposure breeds dismissal. What makes the void so unsettling is its psychological impact. People are unnerved by what they cannot read. Uncertainty is uncomfortable, yet it is also captivating. Neuroscience suggests that the human brain releases dopamine not only when rewards are delivered, but also when outcomes are uncertain. This means that ambiguity itself is addictive. A silent presence then becomes a psychological trap. People lean in, they guess, they project, and in doing so, they give far more than they realize. Another way to frame this is through the concept of emotional minimalism. Just as minimalism in design or lifestyle makes every item more valuable by stripping away excess, emotional minimalism magnifies influence by reducing expression. Every word spoken after long silence lands heavier. Every gesture made sparingly carries more symbolic weight. When you make yourself rare, you force others to recalibrate their perception of value. Scarcity amplifies significance. However, adopting the void is not effortless. It requires dismantling deeply ingrained habits. Most people are addicted to performance, performing competence, performing kindness, performing relevance. Silence feels unnatural because it feels like surrender. But here lies the paradox. True surrender is in chasing validation, not in withholding it. The one who remains composed in silence demonstrates inner sufficiency. They need nothing from others, and that self-possession is precisely what compels others to give. The third lesson of the void is therefore composure under tension. It is not enough to simply remain quiet. One must remain quiet with presence, with confidence, with an energy that communicates control. Silence without presence is forgettable. Silence with composure becomes unforgettable. The true power of the void reveals itself when combined with presence. If you simply vanish, if you give nothing and appear to be nothing, people forget you. But if you give nothing while appearing composed, confident, and even dangerous, you create an unforgettable impression. The silence becomes charged, like static in the air before a storm. People sense that something lies beneath, but because they cannot define it, they become fixated. This is why the most feared leaders, negotiators, and thinkers often spoke sparingly. Their aura came not from verbosity, but from economy. They understood that what is withheld has greater gravity than what is given. Consider the battlefield of modern social life. In offices, on digital platforms, and in social gatherings, most people desperately seek recognition. They laugh too loudly, comment too frequently, and share too much, all in the hope of being noticed. But what happens when someone does the opposite? A man who refrains from posting endlessly on social media, who declines to chase approval, who maintains a posture of detachment. Suddenly others talk about him more than those constantly performing. Why? Because scarcity breeds speculation. People create narratives to explain silence, and those narratives often elevate the silent figure beyond reality. This effect intensifies in conflict. When insulted, most people react. They defend, they explain, they retaliate. In doing so, they validate their adversary by acknowledging relevance. But when you refuse to react, you deny the attacker the very fuel they seek. They begin to doubt themselves. Was their insult ineffective? Did you not care? Did they matter at all? This uncertainty corrodes them from within. You win not by striking back, but by never stepping into their frame. The void makes enemies self-destruct without you lifting a hand. The psychology of relationships confirms this dynamic. People do not fall in love with complete transparency. They fall in love with what they imagine. When you reveal little, others project depth onto you. They assume complexity in your restraint. They romanticize your silence. This is why those who give too much too soon rarely maintain long-term fascination. Familiarity erodes allure. By contrast, the one who reveals selectively maintains an aura that others cannot fully grasp. And that aura compels pursuit. The discipline of the void therefore functions as both a filter and a weapon. It filters because only those who can endure your silence are truly aligned with your strength. It eliminates the impatient, the shallow, and the insecure. At the same time, it is a weapon because it generates asymmetry. Others reveal while you withhold. Others perform while you remain composed. Others burn energy while you conserve it. Over time, the imbalance becomes unbearable, and they surrender more than they ever intended. The fourth lesson of the void is selectivity. Not every silence is the same. To be effective, your restraint must be deliberate, timed, and purposeful. You must know when to withhold, to create tension, when to delay to build anticipation, and when to reveal sparingly to maximize impact. Silence, when mastered, ceases to be absence. It becomes dominance. At the highest level, the void ceases to be a tactic and becomes an identity. It is no longer calculated silence, but a way of being forged through discipline and self-possession. You are not pretending to be unreadable. You genuinely have no need to be decoded. You no longer fight for attention. You no longer beg for validation. And you no longer waste energy proving yourself. You have built a presence so stable that others orbit you without invitation. This transformation has practical consequences. In business, you gain leverage because people overcommit in their attempts to interpret you. In negotiations, you command concessions because silence unnerves those who fear the unknown. In relationships, you inspire fascination because mystery ignites imagination. And in life itself, you rise above the emotional economy that enslaves most people, the endless cycle of oversharing, explaining, and reacting. But the void is not emptiness. It is fullness contained. It is awareness without exposure, discipline without suppression, power without noise. It is the recognition that the less you give, the more weight your presence carries. A single word, a measured glance, or a delayed response resonates far more when it emerges from a foundation of silence. You have made yourself rare, and rarity commands reverence. The final lesson of the void is sovereignty. By refusing to participate in the endless performance of modern life, you reclaim control. You are no longer moved by demand. You dictate tempo. You are no longer measured by others. They measure themselves against you. And in this asymmetry lies true power. Remember this: in a world addicted to noise, the rarest presence is silence. And silence, when mastered, is not weakness. It is domination.